Let's talk about how one mayor's defiance, her flat-out refusal to follow the law, could cost an entire city hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars. This isn't just some small clerical mistake or missed deadline. No, this is a direct assault on government transparency, a power move that says, I'm above the rules. But now, that arrogance is coming with a price tag, one that could bleed the village of Dalton dry. At the center of this storm is a FOIA request. That's the Freedom of Information Act, and a former mayor who allegedly thought she could outsmart it. Tiffany A. Henyard, the self-proclaimed super mayor, decided she didn't need to comply. And now, both she and the entire village of Dalton are staring down massive legal and financial consequences. Tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, all because she refused to hand over public records. So, let's break this down step by step. FOIA laws exist for one reason, to keep government honest, to make sure public officials operate in the open, not behind closed doors with taxpayer money. Citizens have a right to request records, emails, budgets, contracts, disciplinary reports, anything tied to public business. Once that request is filed, the law gives a limited window to respond. Either you hand over the documents, or you give a legitimate, legal reason not to. Period. Sure, there are exemptions, national security, privacy concerns, active investigations. But here's the key. You have to justify those exemptions. You can't just ignore the request. And you definitely can't ignore the court once it becomes a lawsuit. But that's exactly what Tiffany Henyard did. She stayed silent. She stonewalled. And that silence, it sparked a legal firestorm that's still burning today. When she finally decided to face the music, she didn't even bother to show up in person. Nope. She logged in on Zoom, camera on, confidence high. But the judge wasn't impressed. In fact, the judge was furious. The message was loud and clear. Next time, you show up in person. And that right there tells you how serious this has become. This isn't political drama anymore. This is a legal war. Now, let's talk about the part that really hits home. The money. Once a FOIA lawsuit is filed, and the government finally decides to comply, courts often make them pay for wasting everyone's time. That means attorney fees, and those don't come cheap. Because when you only tell the truth after you're sued, you're basically paying for your own cover-up. And in this case, the tab could be enormous. At the federal level, attorney fees in FOIA cases can soar past $100,000, even higher when the lawyers bill $600 to $700 an hour. Now, Illinois state courts are a bit cheaper, but that doesn't mean small-town Dalton can handle it. They're not Chicago. They don't have deep pockets. A legal bill like that could easily gut their annual budget, all because Tiffany Henyard refused to cooperate. So, who's on the hook for paying all this? Technically, it's the public agency, the village of Dalton itself. But if the court finds that Tiffany's refusal was willful, that she personally chose to ignore the request, she could be held personally liable. That's right. The bill, the fines, the attorney fees, all of it could land right in her lap. And if that happens, the super mayor might finally feel what accountability actually looks like. Because this isn't just negligence, it's misconduct. She wasn't a random staffer. She was the mayor. She had control over the records. And if she intentionally blocked their release, that crosses a line from sloppy governance to outright abuse of power. That's not incompetence. That's corruption. And it gets even worse. Under Illinois FOIA law, if the court finds a willful refusal to comply, they can tack on civil penalties, up to $1,000 per day per violation. Let that sink in. If 3 documents were withheld for 90 days, that's $270,000 in fines. Not counting attorney fees, not counting damages, just straight-up penalties, all because of one woman's ego. Now, some people might say, she's out of office now, why does this even matter? But that's not how it works. Government doesn't get amnesia. Actions taken in office follow you even after you're gone. The village of Dalton still has to clean up her mess, pay the lawyers, and face the music. And if the court decides Tiffany's personally responsible, this could lead to even harsher consequences. Sanctions, lawsuits, maybe even being barred from holding office ever again. Here's the truth no one really talks about. FOIA isn't just a transparency law. It's a weapon. It's one of the few tools citizens have to hold their leaders accountable when they try to hide behind paperwork and politics. It forces governments to answer for what they do behind closed doors. And when someone ignores that tool, the fallout is explosive. Legal fees skyrocket, public trust collapses, lawsuits pile up, and sometimes it even leads to criminal charges. If Tiffany Henyard really did refuse to release public records, and if a judge finds that it wasn't a mistake, but a choice, then she's not just walking away from a messy administration. She could be walking straight into personal legal jeopardy. Because this time, actions taken in office follow you even after you're gone. The village of Dalton still has to clean up her mess, pay the lawyers, and face the music. And if the court decides Tiffany's personally responsible, this could lead to even harsher consequences. Sanctions, lawsuits, maybe even being barred from holding office ever again. Here's the truth no one really talks about. FOIA isn't just a transparency law. It's a weapon. It's one of the few tools citizens have to hold their leaders accountable when they try to hide behind paperwork and politics. It forces governments to answer for what they do behind closed doors. And when someone ignores that tool, the fallout is explosive. Legal fees skyrocket, public trust collapses, lawsuits pile up, and sometimes it even leads to criminal charges. If Tiffany Henyard really did refuse to release public records, and if a judge finds that it wasn't a mistake, but a choice, then she's not just walking away from a messy administration. She could be walking straight into personal legal jeopardy. Because this time, the consequences won't just vanish with her title. The law doesn't care if you're former mayor. If you broke it, you own it. Now, the village of Dalton is caught in the middle of this disaster. On paper, they're the ones legally responsible for handling FOIA requests. But in reality, it's the citizens, the taxpayers, who'll be footing the bill. Real people who had nothing to do with this decision could end up paying the price for one official's arrogance. And that's more than a financial hit. It's a moral one, because when leaders fail, their communities shouldn't have to bleed for it. So here's the question. Should the people of Dalton suffer for the actions of a mayor they no longer support? Or should Tiffany Henyard be the one to face the fallout personally, even after leaving office? That's the ethical and legal crossroads this case is sitting at right now. And the court will have to decide which side of justice it stands on. As the hearings move forward, the tension is only growing. The next court date could decide everything. Whether Dalton is forced to pay massive attorney fees, slapped with daily fines, or both. And if that happens, it won't just be another headline. It'll be a cautionary tale. A perfect example of how ignoring a simple records request can spiral into financial chaos and destroy political careers long after they've ended. So the big question now, will the court hold Tiffany Henyard personally accountable? Or will Dalton's residents, innocent taxpayers, be left picking up the pieces of her decisions? Tell me what you think in the comments. Should she pay the price, or should the city?